Hello, welcome back to meetrabbits.org. You can see I've got my barn hair don't care, hats off. Temperatures have been rising. We've been in the 40s, actually almost up to 50 yesterday here. So it looks like spring might actually come. We've been living in a world of ice and snow lately and single digits to 20s. And now we're coming out of that with some warmer temps, which is good because I've been battling issues with keeping enough water into everybody and keeping it open. So I'm happy to have things just a little bit freed up that way. But here today to talk about some more reader questions. And the question I'm addressing today is, how do you decide who to harvest? So let's jump into that and take a look at how do you know who's meat for the freezer or not? So let's say this first. Most of the rabbits that get bred and born here are for the freezer. That's the point. They're meat rabbits for production, for household use, for meat. So most of them by far are destined to become grow outs for meat. I'm going to shut this door because this one obviously wants to get into her hay here. Thought she'd visit us for a minute, but she's got a mind of her own. So that's fine. So probably a better question would actually be, how do you decide who to hold back, who to keep? Because when I'm breeding, I'm planning litters for meat production. So it's kind of assumed, it's kind of a given that most of the rabbits that are born will just be grow outs for the freezer. But then we have those, that we decide to hold back. And that's a combination of a lot of factors. We'll go into a separate article on another day in more depth about selecting potential breeding stock, selecting things that I might be willing to sell as breeding stock to somebody else. And a little bit, I guess it could even reach into selecting who I might sell if someone were to approach me and want, say, a live grow out that they could harvest themselves. So most of the answers really about who to harvest are pretty easy. Everything's kept in cages in the barn. That prevents a lot of parasite and pathogen issues. I know there are people that like their colonies. That's fine if that's your thing. That's not my thing. I've seen way too many nasty looking coccidiosis livers to want to grow rabbits on the ground. So we're in cages here. So I guess I kind of can overlook that if there was an obviously sick rabbit that had something that I would be concerned that was transmissible to me or my household, then I would cull it and dispose of it rather than harvest it. But I can say that I've never had that issue because the few issues that I have had and the few losses that I have had, and there have been some, usually actually occurred much early on. They were not to a age, stage, or growth weight to be harvested anyway. Usually they just don't make it that far. Typically, rabbits, things go right most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. And that's just an issue that I have to make a decision with. If something was sick or looking like it was failure to thrive or not growing, either nature would have taken its course or I would have taken the course for it, because I wouldn't leave an animal around to suffer. So nothing ever gets that far. Also need to keep in mind that when I say that everything's bred intentionally with the intention, for the most part, of being a grow out for meat, I do always kind of keep in the back of my mind timing and whether I'm looking to keep a breeder. So potentially in every litter, there could be some great prospects that could make some great breeding animals. And sometimes it's a little tough to harvest those for the freezer, because that you've got great potential there, but you just don't need the animals. And there's no use in me keeping an animal on that I'm just feeding for no reason. So usually that will be a factor in it if I am planning to hold back breeders or not. And that all relates directly to the age and stock of the breeders that I have, whether anything is aging out and maybe needs replacing. You know, we've talked in some recent videos, some of these does that are not performing well anymore because they're getting older, like Holly, who's 5 years old. So yes, she needs replacing. So I am looking for a replacement. I'm also transitioning through and bringing on the Champagnes, because that's a breed I wanted to get into. So, excuse me, making some decisions there. So that's always in the back of the mind, whether it is time to replace a breeder and whether I'm looking for something to replace it, or whether we're not in that stage, in which case everything's just going to harvest. But, you know, the bottom line is that really every litter is born with the intention of it being a grow out for harvest. Now, the more that I get into the Champagnes and want to possibly offer some breeding stock, that may become a new factor. I may change up some of my plans and my rules there. And in that case, I will be looking for something that makes a good potential breeder, whether it's for me or for someone that I sell it to. We've talked in the videos where we've done the weigh-ins on this group of Champagnes that is now 18 weeks old. If you followed along in some of those, you'll know that I've liked the looks of this particular doe. Her growth rate has been excellent from the very beginning. And so she is one that I'm holding back as a breeder right now. I won't attempt to breed her for several months. She's not there. She's not old enough. But she's one that I'm going to hold back as a potential breeder. I do have enough genetics amongst the Champagnes that she can breed back to one of the bucks. So that will be fine. I also have the potential of saving from an unrelated litter because those two does and these two bucks are all unrelated, so their offspring can cross up again. That was intentional when I bought those, to know that I had enough to play with there. Now these others, they actually have had great growth rates too. She's been the best among them, so she's the one that I am selecting for that purpose to hold back. The others, given their rate of gain, their performance, their health, they'd be perfectly fine. I have no problems offering them for sale as a breeder to somebody else. I've put that out there on a few of the forums, had some interest, and if there's no takers, then they'll go to the freezer. And sometimes that can be a little tough, like I said, because you've got this great looking animal and you're going to eat it. But something to keep in mind is that rabbits breed quickly. And there's pretty much always another litter coming up behind it, and you can't be guaranteed of the same performance. But if you're keeping track, knowing what you have, and keeping track of those grow outs, you can select and find among them some promising ones too. So I hope that clarifies the answer to that question. And if not, please pop it in the comments. If there's something you want me to go into more detail on or expand upon, I'm happy to do that too. Thanks for being here. Hope you have a great day. Like, share, subscribe, and come on over to meetrabbits.org where we have more information on the topic to share.